I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Pro-lifers in the Brooklyn Diocese who did not make it to Washington gather closer to home.
This has been the focal gathering point of people who can't go for whatever reason to in some way participate in the prayerfulness of today.
And we'll also catch up with a young man from the area who marched in D.C.
I know that behind me, in front of me, towards my left, towards my right, there's other people like me who want to give the chance, the right to live.
Plus, following the president's State of the Union address, a call to action. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Well, while it may have felt like the entire pro-life movement made it down to Washington for Monday's March for Life, not all pro-lifers could make it to D.C. Back here in the Brooklyn Diocese, some of the people who could not get on the bus actually got in the pews at St. Joseph's in Bayside, Queens. Advocates for Life gathered there to celebrate a Mass for Peace and Justice. It's meant to serve as a penance for abortion and to pray for full legal recognition of the right to life. And as we discovered, while they may not have been at the march in body, they were there definitely in spirit.
Many people would look at us who so staunchly defend life and say that we are crazy. Why are you doing it? It's 38 years already. Nothing's changed. But we know that what we're involved in is a fight for the truth.
The March for Life is really what it's all about. It's where my heart is. And this is the first time in 14 years I haven't been able to actually get down to Washington. So I was very happy that Father was willing to have this wonderful Mass tonight. My particular prayers tonight certainly were for the babies and their mothers. I work as a volunteer for Rachel's Vineyard, which is to heal mothers who have had abortions. So that's where my heart is also. But really at this time I'm praying a lot also for the defeat of Bill number 371 in the City Council that would basically make it very difficult for the crisis pregnancy centers to be effective here.
For the last 9 years, this has been the focal gathering point of people who can't go for whatever reason to come together to celebrate this Mass for Peace and Justice and to in some way participate in the prayerfulness of today.
It's a special opportunity to come into cognizance, to come into awareness of what has happened through the legal abortion, through that decision, Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion and opened up the door to the Holocaust of all of these unborn wonderful babies who never had a chance.
What I find most encouraging is to see every year the growing number of young people who are participating in the Right to Life movement. And all you have to do is look at that march. Young people want to hear the truth. They want to hear, yes, this is right, no, this is wrong. They don't want wishy-washy. They want the truth.
We're at a tipping point. You have to be energized when you see all of the young faces and the new generation, and it gives us hope that this will change. It's like God is saying, I want your attention. I want your attention. Now is the time.
And later on in the show, we'll catch up with a young man who did make it down to Washington for the March for Life. But stay with us, there's more currents ahead. When we do come back, we'll have the day's headlines, including President Obama talked about more than the economy in his State of the Union address. We'll tell you what else he had to say. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, another view of the March for Life in Washington. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. All eyes were on President Obama Tuesday night for the State of the Union address. Jobs and the economy dominated that speech, but those were not the only things the president discussed. Mr. Obama also said the country's immigration policy needs reforming.
I know that debate will be difficult. I know it will take time, but tonight, let's agree to make that effort. And let's stop expelling talented, responsible young people who could be staffing our research labs or starting a new business. who could be further enriching this nation.
Last year, the Senate failed to pass the DREAM Act, which would have given legal status to young undocumented immigrants who meet certain criteria. The U.S. Bishops' Conference supported that legislation. Now, the president also made reference to last year's successful repeal of the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy.
Our troops come from every corner of this country. They're black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. They are Christian and Hindu, Jewish and Muslim. And yes, we know that some of them are gay. Starting this year, no American will be forbidden from serving the country they love because of who they love.
The Archbishop for Military Services had urged Congress not to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In last night's address, the president also spoke about another issue on the minds of many Americans this week: health care.
Now, I have heard rumors that a few of you still have concerns about our new health care law. So let me be the first to say that anything can be improved. If you have ideas about how to improve this law by making care better or more affordable, I am eager to work with you.
Well, earlier this week, U.S. bishops urged Congress to support 3 bills aimed at ending taxpayer funding for abortion and ensuring conscience rights for healthcare professionals. We'll have more on all that coming up later in the show. From California, a doctor in Anaheim has agreed to give up his license after being accused of murder in the death of a woman seeking an abortion. Dr. Andrew Rutland will surrender his license in February rather than face disciplinary proceedings. He's accused of gross negligence after a woman seeking an abortion died because of a toxic reaction to anesthesia. This comes on the heels of a Philadelphia abortion doctor being charged with murdering 7 babies and 1 mother in his clinic. Well, back to the nation's capital now, where conservatives in the House say they'll move to ban same-sex marriage in Washington, D.C. The congressional newspaper The Hill reports Congressman Jim Jordan, chairman of the Conservative Republican Study Committee, will push for a vote on that issue. Jordan had introduced the legislation in the last Congress. It's expected to attract some more support now in the new Republican-led House. From Louisiana, a new hospital will open soon in the eastern part of New Orleans for the first time since Hurricane Katrina, with the help of 2 Catholic healthcare providers. New Orleans will partner with the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady Health System and the Daughters of Charity. The 2 systems will provide care at a hospital facility that had been shut down. Turning now to the Vatican, where Pope Benedict says differences of belief, especially on human sexuality and marriage, should not be ignored in ecumenical dialogue. The Pope made his remarks in a meeting with representatives from the Lutheran Church. He said that ecumenical dialogue should not be separated from reality. He also said differences cannot be ignored because of fear of damaging progress. Well, yesterday, the Pope wrapped up the week of prayer for Christian unity. At an ecumenical prayer service, he said Christians need to resist the temptation to believe that their churches will never be united as one.
Il nostro dovere è proseguire con passione il cammino verso questa meta con un dialogo serio e rigoroso per approfondire il comune patrimonio teologico, liturgico e spirituale, con la reciproca conoscenza, con la formazione ecumenica delle nuove generazioni e soprattutto con la conversione del cuore e con la preghiera.
The Pope presided over yesterday's service with representatives from Orthodox, Anglican, and Protestant churches. And the recent decision by Muslim Egyptian scholars to cut off dialogue with the Vatican may have been the result of some media distortion. Reports say the Al Jazeera network was among many media outlets around the world to report the Pope calling on Western governments to defend Christians in the Middle East. What the Pope actually did in a New Year's Day message was call on leaders of all nations to help promote and build peace. Catholic officials in Egypt have been working to clarify the Pope's remarks. Stay tuned, there's much more currents ahead. Just ahead, it's an address for the state of the unborn, and I'll talk to the woman who gave it.
We have the momentum, we have the power, have all the ability to save children's lives by stopping the funding of their deaths.
Welcome back. Well, in last night's State of the Union address, President Obama indicated he is willing to make changes to the controversial health care reform law. House Republicans have introduced 3 bills to try and do just that. Reports say the legislation would permanently ban taxpayer funding of abortion and protect the conscience rights of health care workers who do not want to participate in abortions. Earlier this week, one pro-life activist called on Americans to act. The Susan B. Anthony list works to elect pro-life representatives to Congress. In her State of the Unborn address, the organization's president, Marjorie Dannenfelser, urged people to contact their representatives in Congress to tell them to sponsor and support the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act.
All we're asking is to say, don't make us pay for this. We're not outlawing one abortion by insisting that we won't be made complicit in the death of even one child.
Well, joining me now to talk more about the State of the Unborn address is Susan B. Anthony list president, Marjorie Dannenfelser. Marjorie, thanks so much for joining us here today on Currents.
I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, no problem at all. So just kind of give us a recap, if you will, of that address and anything that you might want to add to it since the President's State of the Union address last night. What is the State of the Unborn?
Well, it's very simple. And using the President's address as a purview, the one issue that held up a vote on this for a very long time, and that he bought off 14 pro-life, self-described Democrats to vote for the bill, and that was the area of abortion funding in the health care bill. And when you apply abortion funding to health care, it makes the whole, it makes health care an oxymoron. It's just not health care anymore. And so he knew that, and with the help of Rahm Emanuel, his top lieutenant, they were able to convince a small group of these pro-life Democrats that an executive order pasted over the bill would somehow protect taxpayers and unborn children from complicity, that would protect them. And the modest proposal that we set forth, and that I, challenged the president, is to do something that is very modest. It's a very modest proposal to say, don't make taxpayers complicit in something that they morally oppose.
And in his address, the president did say, I'm willing to kind of make some changes, or at least look at doing that and all of that. Do you think that might be a little bit of an olive branch to the pro-life movement, or do you think he was talking about everything but the concerns over taxpayer-funded abortion?
I think, having dealt with this president and his colleagues for a while, I believe that I know what his intentions are. His intentions are far from a real fix. He is a believer. He is a believer that health care includes what he believes is a reproductive right. He was very clear on that. He, in his own statement right before the address, on the day of the March for Life, he said, we need to ensure to our daughters and to every woman that their futures will be protected, that their success will be protected by making sure that they can have an abortion whenever they want it. So he is not a believer in this cause, and he is in the vast minority. I do not believe that that was an open door. I believe that the vast majority of Americans now we're in a very strong place. We flexed the muscle in this election, and now it's time to flex the muscle legislatively and force this issue upon this president, and we'll see what he does when that bill gets to his desk.
Sure.
And if he goes the wrong way, well, we got to set up for the presidential election that will certainly hurt him.
There you go. Well, and you spoke about the executive order just a moment ago. Reiterate for us exactly why a lot of people, not just yourself, but a lot of people in the pro-life movement have said that executive order is not good enough and it doesn't really guarantee the things that need to be guaranteed in law.
The only thing that works in law is legal language. An order is exactly what it sounds like. It is what I know as a mother of 5. It's like stamping your feet saying, please do this, you must do this. But an act of Congress is the only thing, a vote of Congress is the only thing that will actually guarantee that right. However, this executive order, even if an executive order did do what he said it would do, this executive order had no language, no even attempt to address the one problem, to fix the funding mechanism, which was a false fix. It was a funding gimmick. It was a phony fix. The executive order didn't even attempt to address that problem, which they all said was the biggest hang-up. So even if an executive order did work, which it won't because of the courts, because of the way our system is set up, there wasn't even an attempt to fix this problem in the Senate. That's still now, the situation now is, if it just went forward as we are, we would still be funding abortions with the cooperation of the federal government. Every human being, every person in America who needs to let their member of Congress know that they won't stand for their tax dollars being used. And when I say every person in America, I really mean that, because it's not just a pro-life movement anymore. I mean, we're pro-life America now. All the polls show that.
All right, well, we'll see where things go from here. Marjorie Denenfelser, the president of the Susan B. Anthony List, thanks so much for joining us here today on Currents. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, no problem at all. And stay tuned, there's much more Currents coming up. When we return, witnessing for life in Washington through the eyes of a first-time marcher.
The right to life is more than a political movement, it's more than an idea, it's more than a religious view.
And finally tonight, we share the story of one out of many. Renee Pena is a member of the youth group Jóvenes Unidos con Cristo, or Youth United with Christ. But that's only half his story. The other half is that for the first time in his life, he, along with thousands of others, marched on Washington, calling for an end to legalized abortion in the U.S. The funny thing is, though, when you listen to this first-time marcher speak, you might think you were listening to a seasoned pro.
I'm here fighting for the baby whose life is in danger in the years to come. I mean, I'm fighting for that. I'm not fighting against the law. I'm fighting for the babies who need to be born. My name is Renee Pena, and I'm pro-life. I've always had friends that are for or pro-abortion. They're like, oh, I believe women should have choice, freedom. But I just want to see other people who support this, who support life. And I think that this will just give me that extra oomph to argue against it. Pro-life to me is just giving the right to the baby, the benefit of the doubt to the baby. It's not the baby's fault that the parents made a mistake. I'm expecting a ton of activists. I'm expecting noise, a depiction of courage to say that this isn't right, that abortion isn't right, that the right to life is more than a political movement, is more than an idea, it's more than a religious view, that it's rational.
Put your sign up, put your sign up.
If I have to do this for the next 10 years, I'm doing it. Just because I know that behind me, in front of me, towards my left, towards my right, there's other people like me who want to give the chance to others, the right to live. It's just a lot of people, a lot of signs and praying. And I'm getting more of the religious aspect of the march. You can hear there's a rosary being prayed right now. Most of the banners are religious. The march branches from a religious view, but I think it ultimately has to go to the political, just because we are a union of people and laws have to be passed. I guess I fed off of the vibe of the atmosphere, the pro-life atmosphere in DC from all over the nation. I saw people from Texas, all over the place. I mean, the pictures are obviously going up on Facebook. I mean, a lot of my friends are gonna know who am I in the issue of abortion. This isn't a popularity contest, and if I'm willing to fight for pro-life, that I'm going against popularity, and that's the price that I have to pay, and I'm willing to sacrifice that. That's something that I will take onto the future from this march.
Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Now, make sure you check us out online at currentsny.net. You can also check out our Facebook page and our Twitter feed as well. Also, if you have a question, comment, or story idea, email us. The email address is dropusaline@currentsny.net. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.